Thank you so much for the introduction, and it's a real pleasure for me to be here. I start by apologizing that I do not speak Estonian, unfortunately, and it's been a very, very long time I've been to Tallinn, so really, really happy to be back and feel this atmosphere of this fantastic event and get the opportunity to speak to all of you a bit on the e-invoicing developments from European perspective primarily, but throw in a little bit of the global angle to it. I'll try to give you the things as they look today, but I will be a bit subjective and express some opinions on where I believe things should be or could be going. So hopefully you'll find it exciting. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them after the session. So without further delay, let's kick it off. Just quickly, I'm normally during day work for Thomson Reuters, and Thomson Reuters is a software company focused on compliance and business process automation. Not only the journalists, so Reuters, yes, that is part of our company as well, but I don't have any journalist badge neither today nor normally during my work time. Besides that, as I was introduced, I'm as well member of OpenPappol, GINA, as well as work closely with OECD when it comes to indirect tax and invoicing topics. There's a lot of text over here on the agenda, but I'm sure you will get the slides afterwards. So I don't need to walk you through the agenda, and let's jump straight to the content I have prepared for you. And let's start with the e-invoicing landscape, how it looks from e-invoicing perspective, but as well from this cryptic CTC perspective, what that is and how you should think about it. What I always like to start with is this picture. It's very simple, but very confusing at the same time. Because depending on who you speak to, people mean different things when they say e-invoicing. For a business, e-invoicing is the process when the supplier is sending a document to the buyer, but for many tax administrations, especially outside of the European Union, that is the document that should be sent to the tax administration. And what I'm very happy about from European perspective, when VIDA was negotiated and approved among member states, that the business perspective and the business interpretation of what electronic invoice or invoice is prevailed. Because what they have, for instance, in Latin America, unfortunately in Italy and Poland as well, is something that I would call e-reporting, where businesses are left absolutely no freedom on how they want to do invoicing. Because invoice is primarily a business document that happens to carry some fiscal information. It is not the other way around. So I'm super happy that the sanity prevailed in the negotiations between 27 countries. It was not an easy negotiation, especially again to get countries like Italy or Poland to change their mind. But where we are heading with VIDA is more of this perspective in a data sharing economy, pretty much. We have had this from the consumer perspective with social media and so on, but we are getting into the same direction when it comes to business data as well, where businesses are exchanging invoices or other documents, and then maybe are sending full or parts of this information to the government so the government can do other things with this information. And so here is when the term CTC pops up, continuous transaction controls. I will not get into much theory what it means, but I want to focus on the letter T over here, transactions. Because invoicing will just be the beginning, at least looking on how governments have been implementing various kinds of data sharing or data controls. So I have a slide with some examples. And I've only picked the European countries over here, either EU or close neighbors. This is normally where everything starts, when government wants to get the invoice data. But eventually, either simultaneously or with some time, they will be asking for other information. Transport data, especially on high-risk fraud goods. ordering data to control the government spend. So Italy is a good example where healthcare is probably the biggest expense of the economy, and they are trying to do the two-way matching, three-way matching of their expenses, similar to how businesses are doing it. We have more and more countries looking into real-time collection of B2C data, consumer receipts. And finally, we have governments looking into business responses. So not only the supplier is sharing the invoice data with the government, but actually the buyer needs to confirm, do I recognize this supplier? Do I approve this invoice? Do I reject this invoice? And governments can leverage this information for other purposes. A very good example to illustrate probably would be Hungary. So if you look on the Hungarian economy from VAT gap perspective, some 12 years ago, they had one of the highest VAT gaps in the European Union. What happened ever since, and I will not say this was the solution to the VAT situation in Hungary, but it was definitely a strong contributor. They have introduced real-time reporting of invoice data. They have introduced transport mandate on fraudulent goods. And they have introduced B2C real-time reporting of the data. So before all these actions, some 10, 12 years ago, the VAT gap of Hungary was 22%, a bit more than 22%. In the latest report from the Commission, the gap is 2%. 20 percentage points of VAT gap is a lot of money. And if you think that governments don't know these developments, please change your mind. They are talking with one another and they are learning from one another. If we look on the country, on the map of Europe, and I've put EU plus here, because there's, again, some countries have been earlier than European Union on introducing CTCs. And we try to apply the VIDA on this. I will not go through each of these bullets. There's a few things I want you to have as a takeaway. First one, this slide is already outdated, even though I've provided it to organizers last week. So I should now move Hungary from over here to this side, as they have an ongoing public consultation on how they will be introducing a new model accordingly to VIDA. So that's one takeaway. Things are moving rapidly. Second takeaway is whatever decision Estonia takes or does not take, Estonia is not isolated. This list is indicating that pretty much every EU country is doing something. So if you're an Estonian business, either doing cross-border transactions or if you have subsidiaries in other EU member states, you will be impacted one way or another. I had a podcast with the Swedish tax agency 2 weeks ago approximately, and what they said under their analysis, at least 20% of Swedish companies are having intra-community cross-border transactions. So 1 in 5 companies will immediately be impacted by the cross-border mandate that happens under VIDA in July 2030. And this number, 20%, doesn't include Swedish companies who have subsidiaries in other EU member states, such as Italy or France or Ireland or Poland, who might already have a CTC e-invoicing mandate in place. So in fact, share of businesses who will be or are already impacted by this is much higher. And again, very subjective. I believe it would be beneficial for Estonia as well to join this movement and make up a plan how to go about implementation of VIDA, of electronic invoicing, not only for the sake of these businesses in Estonia who one way or another will be impacted by this, but as well for the sake of Estonian software industry, who is strong, one of the strongest probably in the European Union, and make that into a new sort of export service coming from Estonia. looking at this map, some of you might think, well, different countries implement e-invoicing and CTCs in very different ways. Is there a common path? Unfortunately, I don't think we will have one system for all 27 countries. That is too much of an illusion, and I don't have it. But we will come closer to one another. Without getting too much into these horrible models, this is one of the best outcomes from VIDA. So the models that have been implemented in these countries can no longer be implemented in other member states because they create too much divergence, and it will be hard for businesses to operate, especially across multiple member states. And as I already flagged, Hungary is already on the way of abandoning the existing framework and going to VIDA-compliant approach. It's the model we in the industry call five-corner model. So that's the data sharing economy where the supplier and the buyer are exchanging data in a digital way, and they ship away parts of the data to the government. And you have the four-corner model, which can be used on domestic level, but maybe not so useful since the businesses involved in the cross-border operations, they will be anyways impacted by the five-corner approach. So at least conceptually, from model perspective, we are getting harmonized on the EU level. Another big trend, not only in the EU, but globally, is adoption of PEPPOL. This slide is outdated. Again, I spoke to the Hungarian tax agency earlier this year, and they are already in discussions with PEPPOL about joining the PEPPOL list of countries. Some countries are heavier users of PEPPOL. Some countries have it optional. But definitely, the adoption is growing. And on this map, you can see only the EU member states, but I could add Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand, and South Korea. It is growing on global scale, and especially for those businesses doing cross-border transactions, this is important because this makes not only data exchange, but trade simpler. What I would encourage everyone after this session, and especially from the governmental side, have a look at these developments that are happening. It's not like there is no way how to implement VIDA in a nice way. There has been already some pilots conducted in the Nordics. So Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and Norway have already conducted some pilots on VIDA leveraging PEPPOL specifications. As well, since 1 year ago, we are working in a project to sort of expand this beyond the Nordic experience. And so far, we've been pretty successful. We've managed to enroll 20 tax administrations from within the EU to be active or less active participants of this pilot. EU Commission is as well observing very closely this pilot, and there is a number of non-European tax administrations looking into it. We will be conducting a pilot, so we are slipping a little bit from Q4 of this year. It will be in Q1 of next year. First pilot, but not the last one. It will be sort of a multiple pilots going on, extending the scope and so forth. Already we have 8 tax administrations who will be participating in the initial phases of this pilot, so definitely going outside of the Nordics. And as recently as last week, one more tax administration from south of the EU as well requested to join as an active participant in the pilot. So will PEPPOL rule Europe? I don't think so, unfortunately, but majority of EU member states, one way or another, will be leveraging PEPPOL. You might ask me, is PEPPOL perfect? If I can quote one Batman movie, this is not the hero you deserve, it's the hero you need. It's not perfect, but PEPPOL is probably the best what we have today to work on not only level of one country, but across multiple countries. And actually, it does its job for businesses. So how can we all collectively prepare for this? From business perspective, and I shouldn't have done this much animation, there's a few different blocks. But what I want to say, this piece, technology, don't think about it. So in case of Estonia, for instance, there isn't any finalized, not that I know, finalized legal framework or technical specifications for any kind of real-time mandate. But what a business can do already now, in anticipation of this, look through all these things. You don't need legislation to review your processes to understand, do you have the data? How easy to get to get that data? Do you have people who are skilled to work with, AI is a big thing, and everyone is training to work with AI, but this is a digital transformation as well. So do you have people who are ready to work in a digital environment? Because big part of any e-invoicing mandate is a change of mindset. This is not one-off exercise. It will change every day, forever. And that's a project that doesn't have an end date. It will continue going. Because the technology, that's only 5 or 10% of this. And from my experience coming from the software industry, again, 90% of time and work and delays in launching from a client perspective is because of not being ready from internal perspective. So don't wait until the legislation is published. Start acting, start preparing now, because what is important with VIDA, since I mentioned July 2030, that's not when VIDA enters into force. It has already entered into force in April of this year. And what VIDA changed is that an EU member state does not need a permission from EU any longer to mandate domestic electronic invoicing. That's why that list that I showed you was so long. Many member states, at least 5 or 6, announced a domestic mandate after April of this year. And if I can make a prediction, I think at least 5 or 10 more will be announcing domestic mandates in the coming 12 months. So again, if you work on a cross-border level, keep that in mind. VIDA is already in place, and domestic mandates can hit your operations at any point in time. So what can governments do to speed up the processes and get on top with VIDA, with e-invoicing? Be part of the Fiscalis projects that are being organized on the EU level, discuss the developments, discuss potential implementations with not only VAT experts, but please bring more technology people into this, because VIDA is a true digital transformation and technology game. It's not so much about VAT. Join the VIDA pilot, be active in the VIDA pilot, and there was a document created by OECD, which I believe is already available to countries members in OECD, but it will go public for everyone in January of next year, where OECD is as well providing guidance and recommendations to member states if they are introducing real-time controls, what's the best way to do it. And finally, leverage existing frameworks, international frameworks, like PEPPOL, instead of developing an island, which will be isolated from global trade, and have a very clear and consistent communication and reasonable timelines. I know many times people say 12 to 18 months. That means not when you should start the communication. This means when technical specifications and legal framework should be ready, and fingers crossed, they don't conflict with one another. But I would say in the context of EU with 27 mandates, probably this timeline should be much earlier than that. And a few very subjective perspective on this from Estonia perspective. I believe that Estonia should stop being an island with bilateral interop agreements between service providers that does not help adoption of electronic invoicing. If you have a multilateral framework like PEPPOL, the cost will go down and the speed and ease of onboarding will be much quicker. Great example is Denmark, who most likely will abandon their domestic framework for the same reason. They don't want to be isolated as an island. They want to join the community. If this is done, why not to abandon or cancel the KMD ENF reporting, which serves absolutely no purpose? And probably with time, the government could think about pre-filling VAT returns, but that is conditioned collection of B2C data as well. And I know there is talks in Estonia about doing some kind of a SAFTI, similar reporting, and looking at other countries. These things are not mutually excluding or exclusive. They are actually complementing one another. So I think we stand ahead of a fantastic, hopefully, an exciting digital journey. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. I have some very easy questions, as I don't see any very difficult questions on the workshop, but if you do have difficult questions in the audience, you can type them in workshop. I'm going to come back to that. But some very easy questions to start with. Now, what is the most important step you think a country like Estonia should actually take now to stay ahead in this world where real-time reporting and e-invoicing is developing in a significant speed?
Stop wasting time and thinking, but rather acting and doing things. And as I mentioned, there is already the PEPPOL VIDA pilot initiative. There is things happening on the EU level. Don't think too much. Move quick. Experiment. Get the feedback from the industry, from the economy, how they would like to have it. Just act.
Now, e-invoicing is something that we're still trying to implement across companies in Estonia. When you look at the statistics, it's quite sad. Now, I believe everyone in this room is very familiar with e-invoicing, but I'm still going to ask, what is the biggest change, in your view, that PEPPOL and VIDA will actually bring to businesses across Europe? Why isn't it a good idea to wait and hope that it will pass?
It will not pass. VIDA is already approved, so it will happen. You can't hide from it. No stopping, putting your hand into the sand. The problem, so to say, will not go away. But to answer your question about why has adoption been so low up until now, that has to do with the variety of different standards, transmission protocols, formats, and so on. And no one can agree on what to do or what to use. So if I can simplify what PEPPOL is very similar to a mobile network. All of you have a mobile phone, and you don't want to be thinking, which operator am I using? How are they exchanging the data? It simply works. And that's the idea with a framework like PEPPOL. You as a business don't even need to know that you are connected to PEPPOL. It should just work, and what you should spend your time, money, and effort on is your phone, is your application. And that is the missing piece for me today in Estonian environment, where exchange of invoice is always upon agreement between this company and that company, and everyone has different preferences. Do we use email? Do we use API? Do we use something else? Do we use UBL or Edifact or something else? It's too costly. It has to be much cheaper. It has to be much quicker. And PEPPOL is a good example of how it can be overcome in like this.
I see a question on workshop. Can you explain in 5 words, and I'll be counting, how VIDA is influencing e-invoicing?
It makes e-invoicing mandatory.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I really don't see any more questions, and I'm out of those simple questions. So I think it's time to say thank you so much. I hope you'll stick around if people have more questions on your bird's eye view of where Europe and the world is heading on e-invoicing. I hope you'll be able to answer those difficult questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.